Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is weekly recap time where we will be talking about everything that's happening in the world of NFTs and maybe a little market talk that we think is relevant here on the show. And joining me today is the one and only Bored Elon. Y'all, I'm sure probably know him from Twitter. Awesome. Started off really as a parody account of Elon Musk and has evolved into a whole kind of entity and brand in and of itself, which we'll talk a little bit about, I'm sure. But Bored, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Carly, for having me. I went through my own merge recently, so I'm now a new version of Elon.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, speaking of the merge, I think we'll probably end up starting there and just talk a little bit about what prices have done, since the merge, what we think that means, some macro trends that you and I are both tracking right now in the space. I want to talk about the new Cool Cat CEO, the Haas brothers drop, Tokenproof news, like lots and lots to get into. But before we do all that, I do have two things for the audience. First, if you are listening to this episode on a podcast app, please do rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. It obviously really helps during these bear market times. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Again, so appreciate that you're here and supporting. And before we get into all this good stuff, we do need to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors.
COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses who need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage their treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the extremely secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasuries to expressive, flexible, multi-chain features such as global user management, global contracts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization. COINSHIFT layers on powerful treasury management tools on top of the proven security of Gnosis Safe, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Messari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. In DeFi, you have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless. There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course, Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets.
Okay, so the merge happened and Ethereum tanked. Do you have any takes on this, Board? I mean, I guess it's sort of straightforward what's going on.
Well, tank is such a relative word.
Sure.
I remember this time last year we were hovering around $3,500, $4,000 for each Ethereum. Personally, I was just really nervous that something would go horribly wrong and we'd be talking about 3-digit ETH, and it all went smoothly. So I'm fairly happy there, and I think ultimately the macro markets are not great, right? So no matter how well the merge was going to go, I just don't think it was going to make that much of a dent. So yeah, long story short, I'm very happy that it didn't tank.
Yeah. I think obviously macro markets feel like they're having the biggest impact in this right now. I think it also, we're getting news on a couple of fronts that this is going to be kind of a longer, colder winter than maybe some people expected or some people hoped. On all fronts, I think the fact that the merge didn't change, didn't pump the price of Ethereum means that, okay, we're gonna be in a crypto winter for a little while, and everything that's coming out of the Fed and everything that's coming out of the kind of macro environment suggests the same. So inflation coming in higher, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a winter, folks. I honestly am trying to kind of relish it a little bit, which is, we were in a very hyper growth environment for a decade that isn't undone in 7 months. And I'd really like a fresher slate. And it feels like a longer bear market is actually probably a healthy thing, so I don't know. That's what my head is around.
I think this is going
it.
to teach patience, and I always try to think about the fact if you were in this space for 4 years plus, remember what Bitcoin was, remember what Ethereum was, and then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, be really happy that you were just patient and waited, and you'll be fine. You just need a little bit of a longer time horizon than the typical NFT customer probably has.
Yeah. I think it was Randy Zuckerberg on this podcast who was like, I always tell people if you're still standing in this industry in like 3 or 4 years, like you will have won. Like, you know what I mean? And there's something very gratifying about that framework for it of like, I just got to like stay in the ring, you know? And for me personally, like really feeling like I can, you know, develop the strongest podcast product possible because anybody who's listening here, like, you know, if it's working during the bear market, you know, when the next bull hits, I feel like, you know, I'll be well positioned. So I think that that kind of thinking applies well beyond just like being an NFT project leader, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody who heard about the recent Figma news about them being acquired for $20
20
billion by
billion.
Adobe, I mean, if you look up their revenue for the first like 4 to 5 years, it's just a flat
They didn't
line,
have
and then
anything.
boom,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a good analogy, I think, for what you're working on and what everybody else in the space is working on, and having that longer, time frame.
That longer vision for sure. Okay, so macro trends that I'm seeing, I tweeted this out this morning to mixed reactions, I think, but I feel like the space is corporatizing, professionalizing, let's say, and I mean that in a really positive way. I think there are growing pains associated with this, but I look at Doodles, Bored Apes, or you know Yuga, Cool Cats just announced their new CEO, and to me, this reads like just a taking themselves really seriously and becoming really professional organizations. Again, that comes with growing pains. There are a lot of people who hate that. I'm personally all in favor of it. And then on the actual corporate side, we see things like the Starbucks program, which I talked about last week on the program, that I think are really genuine entrants into Web3 that aren't cash grabs. They're not gimmicky. They are, I mean, they're building a loyalty program around NFTs and it's Starbucks. I mean, I think that's huge. And we'll talk about a couple other loyalty programs that are coming out. So there's like a general wave towards corporatizing, professionalizing, as I'm putting it, which I think triggers some people, but that I'm really positive on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this space either has to go to hundreds of millions of users or it's going to zero inevitably. And the only way to
Mm,
really do that is if it corporatizes. And that means there are going to be some lame, cash grabby, or just kind of, uncool versions of what we've already seen. But they're going to be brands that really figure it out, right? You think about like the Adidases of the world and Red Bulls. They know how to preserve culture, how to create culture. And I think that they'll do a good job. And I even think to the analogy of like when Disney bought Star Wars. Star Wars obviously had a huge fan base before, but the product was a little scrappy. Their movies weren't always very good. I know I'm going to get hate mail now, but after Disney bought them, like look what happened to Star Wars, right? So much cool shit came out. Sorry if I swore,
oh, I
if I'm not
curse
allowed
all
to
the
swear.
time. Sorry.
Oh,
Trigger
okay,
warning,
okay.
y'all.
But yeah, I mean, it was so much better. So I like to think about that. Like if the big content creators and the brands that really know how to maximize and create culture come in, and some of them are going to do a great job. So I have a similar take to you that overall it's a positive.
Totally. And I, you know, I find the pushback to it a little bit strange because it feels like it comes from a place of, hey, I've been in this cool nuclear club for nuclear. Wait, right? Am I now in my own head?
Nuclear is correct.
Nuclear
Nuclear is not
is
correct.
the problem. Yikes. All right. Thursday morning, y'all. We're gonna make it. And you know, like you can track this across any subculture that then becomes mainstream, where you have the early adopters and the early subculture adopters who hate what the culture becomes. But to your point, it will die if it doesn't grow. And so I think it's like I get why people find it painful, but like this is where it has to be to survive. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, look, I saw Lady Gaga perform in 2013 on a very small stage at Lollapalooza, and
Mm.
nobody knew who she was, and she was really great. And then she got big, and she's still great. That's fine.
Yeah.
We can, but yeah,
But I'm
nobody
sure
wants
plenty
their
of people
band to
screamed at her, being like, "Sell out!" You
sell
know,
out.
you've
Yeah.
abandoned the original community, et cetera, et cetera. You tweeted, and this felt tied into this recently. I'll pull this up here. Basically, I love this. If hype is the thing that brought you a customer, it is the product they'll continue to expect for them to stay. So if hype is your product, that's what people are going to continue to want. Say a little bit more about this. Do you think we're entering a phase where hype is not the product as much anymore? Is that part of this professionalizing in your view, or where do you think we are?
Well, I certainly don't want to name any names of recent projects that have come out, but there's always this like perfect proportion of product versus hype. And
Mm.
unfortunately, when the spectrum swings too far to the hype side, you're really bringing in a first cohort of customers that are really focused on that level of hype, and they're always going to expect it throughout your company's lifespan, and that's just not sustainable, right? Like hype moments are just these small moments in time that get you a little bit of visibility, and then you've got to deliver a product. But the problem is like if you set those expectations really high, you're inevitably going to disappoint. So I'm always in favor of under promise and over deliver. And I think to your point earlier, with the corporatization of the NFT space, a lot of these projects and companies are probably going to get that same kind of help and advice, which is, hey, let's make sure that we're ready to launch and have a really good first impression, because if we overhype ourselves, we're just going to lose everybody, after the first few months.
And every project, because the space was overhyped, every project has suffered some sort of blowback from the overhype phenomenon, whether or not they had a direct hand in causing the overhype. I've said endlessly on this podcast, this space has traditionally penalized specificity and rewarded vagueness, and
Yes.
hype is all about vague. You don't really know what we're going to do. We have some abstract vision of this amazing thing we're going to create that's going to create all this value. And the truth is, value is created over the long term, slogging away day after day, month after month for years. And it's just not going to get you the kind of quick return stuff. So I think that's also part of the growing pains here, is like as Doodles or Yuga or whatever start to actualize visions, the vision gets more specific and it's sort of less just like vague hype, and that gets penalized by a certain cohort. So
yeah, and you certainly see the bigger projects, like the Yuga Labs of the world, that are very careful now about what they say. There's a lot of speculation that happens by the community, of course, but that's not something that they spur. They hold back and then reveal stuff now when they're ready to reveal it, and I think that's the right approach. And ultimately, you have to earn the right to hype. I think if you're hyping before you've earned that loyalty, it's kind of disrespectful to your community. Hot take.
Yeah, I'm into it. I agree. Something that I have been getting a kick out of this week, and I'm assuming you may have seen, is Marc Andreessen changed his bio on Twitter to a quote that Kanye West said on CNBC. Have you been tracking this?
A little bit, yes, but go on.
So let me read this tweet. So he's since adjusted it a little bit. I'm wondering if he was getting some pushback, but originally he had set his Twitter bio to, "I'm not going to argue with people that are broker than me about money," which is something that Kanye West said on CNBC this past week, I believe, or last week, when he was being interviewed about the fallout of his deal with Gap. He had this deal to design clothing for Gap. It was the Gap Easy line. It's fallen apart for any number of reasons, I'm sure. And so he was on CNBC talking, and he said, "I'm not going to argue with people that are broker than me about money." Marc Andreessen made that his Twitter bio. I think that's hilarious, frankly. And as part of Kanye's appearance on CNBC, his broader point seemed to, he took this very like, I alone can save Gap mentality, which is very Kanye hubris, whatever. But I was thinking about it and I was like, he's probably not entirely wrong. Like, in terms of somebody who can bring cool factor and culture and can sell out a product line, like Kanye is among the best of the best at that. And Gap is really like an old school retailer that doesn't have a lot of cachet, at least in my world, anymore. And I think that's being borne out in their numbers, and they're a struggling retailer, along with a number of struggling retailers from a similar era, I would argue. I've written about Bed Bath & Beyond in the past. Old Navy, which is a Gap brand, is struggling. Like, all of these products are struggling. And it feels like it's part of this broader trend towards people and creators over corporations. And so the All In podcast this past week, I don't know how many folks who listen to my show also listen to All In. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some overlap there. Jason Freeberg. Yes.
David
Freeberg. David Freeberg. Oh my God.
David.
Jason Calacanis, David Freeberg.
You've merged them all into one.
God,
human,
Thursday mornings really are suddenly rough for me. I'm not on my game today. Anyways, David Freeberg really talked about this, where he's like, I think the M&A deal of the year was Penn Gaming buying Barstool Sports, because he's like, everything is about content now. The biggest brands are being launched not by corporations but by individuals. Mr. Beast's chocolate brand that he launched went to number one. Kim Kardashian obviously doing her private equity deal. Any brand she tweets about, is catapulted into the stratosphere. So I just think it's an interesting trend, and it bodes well for like NFTs and the blockchain economy, which is there's so much talk around creator empowerment and kind of servicing creators. So I want to get your thoughts on that trend.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think ultimately here Kanye is right with the typical hubris, as you said. But you have to ask, why did he take the deal in the first place? It's almost like, this is a bad breakup, and now he's kind of like crapping all over his
Mm.
ex, which is very appropriate given what he just went through. But if he understands culture, if he is a force of attention, like why did he take the Gap deal, right? It almost makes him look like the dummy, and he
Mm.
should have known better. So yeah, I think probably, he didn't really agree with the Gap on a lot of their approach, but ultimately kind of his bad for jumping in. But I think the macro takeaway for me is that old retailers are dying because retail and the attention on physical goods is also in decline, right? Like that is what the NFT
Mm.
represents. It is a digital object, and we have a lot of value in these things that are not sold in malls across America. And so if you're Kanye, you should probably be expanding into digital retail and digital objects, and not getting into deals with these 50-year-old companies that are super lame, in my opinion.
And what he said he was never going to, don't ask me about NFTs or something. He didn't say he was never going to get into NFTs, but Kanye did come out and kind of publicly say with that little sign or something like, stop asking about NFTs. I'm not doing them, or something
I
along
mean,
those lines.
listen. Every song he sells that is downloaded is an NFT, right? You can call it whatever
Mm.
you want. Like he's already in the business of selling digital goods. It's just they're called
There's
different
not
things and
backed on the
distributed different.
blockchain.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also this greater segmentation of audience. I think, like, we have so much more choice now, and so much of talks, at least in the creator economy side of the blockchain space, is about like monetizing your super fans more, and then kind of highly monetizing the groups of people that really love you. And that ties into this, like, we just aren't reliant on like 5 brands anymore. We have, we're getting Instagram spammed all the time for like the much cooler linen store than Bed Bath and Beyond, and what I think is cool as a linen store is going to be different than what my fiance thinks. And like, it's the segmentation of audiences into like smaller and smaller niches that I think NFTs can really help to better monetize for businesses as the audience size maybe gets smaller for brands, because we can just, go more into what we each want.
I can tell what life stage you're in just based on the ads you're getting served on Instagram. Recently moving, settling down.
Yeah. Though I don't think I've gotten a lot of linens ads, to be fair, but I was thinking about Bed Bath and Beyond. I get just like constant sports bras that fix my posture, and I'm like, yikes. Like,
Wow, scarily specific.
that is what I am fed daily on Instagram, and it works. I've bought 2 of them. So okay, a couple other just outside of the NFT space, but I think have some relevance here that I wanted to flag. Tencent, which is one of just the biggest, I don't know, Chinese venture funds. I mean, I as I've been kind of studying the gaming industry and studying Spotify and like a bunch of businesses that I just find fascinating, Tencent just shows up again and again and again as like an investor in all of these companies. I think they own effectively Epic at this point. I think they have a 93% stake in Epic Games, which did, Fortnite, obviously, and they have a 40% stake in Riot Games, which was League of Legends, and just everything else. They are potentially spinning off some of their like subsidiaries, saying that they want to kind of invest further into gaming and go further into their core. Just think that's interesting given sort of the gaming NFT conversation. Like, they're just a player to kind of watch. They'd actually launched an NFT marketplace and shut it down after about a year, partly because of declining sales and the bear market, and also because of Chinese regulation and just I think issues with the Chinese government. You're very in the gaming world. Just any broad thoughts on this? It's just something that caught my attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Tencent is the biggest gaming publisher in the world now. If you kind of combine all of their stakes in these massive games, Riot and Epic, of course, being very large ones. What's really interesting is that in China there's a lot of regulation against gaming. A lot of gaming
Mm.
companies can't even publish there. Kids are restricted in terms of how long they're allowed to play. So it's very much kind of banking on the fact that the West, quote unquote, is going to continue to be interested in video games. So them kind of shutting or divesting from these older industries and putting more money into gaming is bullish for the gaming industry. It's a little bit of an odd contradiction, based on sort of just like the the rules they have at home. But what I will say, and this kind of ties back to the retail discussion we're having, if you're Tencent and you need to grow your investments and you see that there are supply chain issues, people care less about physical stuff, yeah, you probably should take your money out of businesses that focus on that and put more of it into digital goods and
Digital
things that can
world.
scale. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Very true. Well, speaking of gaming and digital goods, give us the update. You launched Bored Boxes. God, like, was it a year ago at this point? When did you launch Bored
It was
Boxes?
4 months ago, but in the world of NFTs, that is a year.
Wow. But you and I talked about it, I guess, because you and I actually kind of talked off the record about it before it launched. When did we talk?
Yeah. We had concepted it about a year ago, and we launched the
Okay.
first box back in May. So you're not wrong.
Okay.
It's been a year in the making for sure. Yeah, and I appreciate your perspective back then. But yeah, we launched our first box in May. Have a really core community of gamers and really people who just want to own their video game items. Like that's always been the key. We never really wanted to get the degens and the traders. We basically just wanted people who love video games and love to own that stuff. So we're launching our second box very soon, and we announced that yesterday, actually.
Very cool. So tell folks just give people a high level overview of Bored Boxes for folks who maybe don't know.
Yeah, so essentially it's both a package of goods, and those goods are game items for various blockchain games, and then it's also a game pass. So basically, when people buy a board box, they're getting a variety of game items from games that we've kind of hand chosen and ones that we really feel have a lot of potential for being super fun and having a great community. And then after the box has been opened and you've claimed all your stuff, you still keep the board box NFT. And then basically we continue to throw people different game items, give them access to our private community, have tournaments, lots of fun stuff like that. So if you were to kind of combine this idea of like a physical loot crate and then also an Xbox Game Pass, that's very much what Board Box is.
So cool. And sorry if I just missed this or if I'm being dense, but is it's all like blockchain game assets because there has to be that ownable component to it that is enabled through blockchain, correct?
Yeah, it's exactly, and it's across any network. So whether it's Solana, Ethereum, Polygon, etc., we're totally agnostic. But yes, it does need to be an on-chain game. That's our focus today. In the future, who knows?
Mm. And what games are you playing these days? Like, what are you super into on the blockchain gaming world?
So I've been loving this game called EV.io. It's a very simple first-person shooter that you actually play in your browser. You don't have to, download a launcher, have a console. It's a really good example of what blockchain games should look like, which is basically you jump in, have a lot of fun. You don't have like NFT stuff rammed down your throat, and then once you're hooked on it, it lets you buy stuff in the game and own it. And I think that is what is going to onboard gamers in the future. It's a very sort of subtle, kind of drawing you into the NFT space, but really putting focus on the game and the gameplay first.
What is your perspective these days on the current state of gamers' feelings around NFTs? Is it as negative as it's ever been? Is it starting to move a little bit? Where are we?
Well, we certainly have got the environmental impact issue out of the way with the merge, right? So great, great news there. I think that right now there's just not enough games on the market from a blockchain perspective to win over gamers,
Yeah,
and it's very simple.
Like fun.
Yeah, that are fun. And I mean, it's very similar to every console launch. Like when you look at when the PS5 or the Xbox went live, there were like 2 or 3 games that were available. It just took time to build a library. So that's where we're at. The other piece of it is that the old video game media like Kotaku and IGN, they keep pushing the narrative of NFTs bad, it's going to ruin your games. And so there needs to be more video game media and content creators that actually educate players and help them understand why it's valuable for them. And so, we're certainly trying to play that role, and we're seeing a lot more content creators become friendly to NFTs, and it's just going to take time to win over people.
Do you think, it almost feels like a leading question because it feels like an obvious yes, but this is a question to get you to speak broadly on this topic. Do you think we'll see more businesses or even like, Web2 or traditional companies invoke like a digital loot box model into their businesses in the future?
Outside of games, you mean?
Yeah, outside of gaming.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it certainly preys on the psyche of humans, right? Like we all love gambling, and we love to sort of, even if you look at kids' toys, like all these like, oh my god, surprise, and all these other toys that are meant for kids. I mean, it definitely is something you've seen. And even like all the subscription boxes that people are now getting in the mail, whether it's for makeup or books or candles or anything else, like we love the element of surprise. So I think there needs to be this delicate balance of it not feeling like it's taking advantage of the customer, and instead is really focusing on the surprise. And I will say, like on the board box side, when everyone buys boxes, they all get the same stuff. We don't do loot boxes, we don't do the gambling piece. Everybody gets the exact same thing, because we didn't want to lean too hard into sort of like that randomness that really gets people upset when they don't pick something that ends up being valuable.
Yeah, I mean, a quick plug. You mentioned OMG surprise boxes and the kids' toys. I did an interview with Will Weinrob, who's building Cryptoys, which is fully premised off of like LOL surprise dolls.
Yep.
And I think it's just an absolutely brilliant business, and I'm rooting for them. I mean, somebody will succeed in that space, creating kind of digital collectible toys that have that surprise open box concept. Right now, it feels like Cryptoys is well in the lead, but we'll see where things shake out. But they're a really impressive company. So go listen to that interview if you have not heard it. Will Weinrob, it's great. He's awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking this through like in real time. And I feel like part of the appeal of like, you see it, you mentioned like with makeup or with like, bark boxes for dog items, but there is a physicality there that feels really important with those things, like makeup, obviously. And it's a way to sample a number of different makeup products and see what you like. With dog products, same thing. It's treats, it's chew toys they can kind of bite into. So there's definitely a model. And I mean, you see like Pranksy does his, the Pranksy boxes, which are different NFTs that you get in a box, which is cool. And that's like on the art side of things, really, and focused on kind of art and collectibles and getting a surprise box full of art and collectibles. But I'm sure there are other interesting ways to utilize this in a traditional business. I just have to
Yeah.
think about it.
Imagine you're going to a concert, right? And Ticketmaster says, okay, we're not going to sell you specific seats. You just buy a ticket for a flat fee, and then we'll tell you where you end up sitting. It could be the front row, but it could be the back row.
Oh,
right?
that's
How would
interesting.
people react to that? Or a plane ticket, same thing.
Yeah, but that's like one item. That's not like a box of like a whole bunch of things. You know what I mean? That's like just like a way to gamify and create gambling out of
pretty much
mundane tasks. Just raise mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about this. Yeah.
Oh no, but I think this idea of serendipity and surprise is really important because people are buying stuff online now. They're not browsing through stores as much. So giving everybody a little bit of like I didn't expect to buy this today, but I really like it is something that is a powerful mechanism for people who are selling physical products.
We all are just trying to get more dopamine hits in life. We just, I've said this on the pod as well, but it seems like an inevitable conclusion that we have, NFTs become just a way to like bet on TV, or, you have your Game of Thrones characters and as your NFTs. And if one of them gets killed in the show, it disappears from your wallet because, shows have just gotten increasingly like violent or sexual or any of these things to try and up the ante in sort of our experience of watching them. And NFTs have the potential, I feel like, to just further up the ante, look at like how sports betting has progressed into just like, an insane industry in and of itself, and, on and on. So, okay, moving on to some other NFT news. There's some Yuga Labs rumors. This does seem, for as much as they've professionalized, leaks seem to be the one thing they can't get a freaking cap on, a lid on. And I don't understand. Now, I'll say there are rumors and there's some leaks claiming that they are planning on doing like a $50 million raise by selling Mecha Ape NFTs, I guess sometime later this year. They were going to launch a new line of NFTs called Mecha Apes with the goal of raising another $50 million and some metaverse land pieces. Garga came out and said this is fake news, like none of this is true. But I think they've previously denied, like there was a leaked deck that came out, if folks will probably remember. And again, Yuga kind of denied that it was real and then later said, okay, well it is, but it was out of date. And so there's like some mixed credibility they have in denying these leak rumors. I'm not saying that they are going to launch a Mecha Apes collection. I have no idea. It seems like maybe that's fake news, but they seem to have gaps. They're leaky. They've got leakage. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I for one would love to have a mecha ape, so I hope it is true. Yeah, I mean, with like a big deck that has a lot of information in it, it's easy to say that that's not real or it's fake because you can just point to like two things that are wrong in it. So therefore, the whole thing is
Right.
incorrect. If it's one specific thing and they say that that's fake, that feels like it's actually fake. Again, to my dismay, because I want mecha apes. So I feel like they've gotten big enough so the leaks are going to continue to happen. Unfortunately, you see this with Apple and video game companies inevitably, like, going back to the dopamine piece, like employees at these companies want the dopamine of leaking really hot information because they want people to give them the acknowledgement that they got that information first. But they also have to be extremely careful. They raised, $450 million from A16Z. You are actually harming your potential future revenue by releasing information earlier than you're supposed to. So to me, if I'm a betting man, I say that this is overall probably not accurate.
Yeah. I'm not as sympathetic. Like, they're not as big as Apple at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they've got their
Mm-hmm.
$4 billion valuation, but I don't know how many employees they have, like 200. Like, they aren't like, get this under freaking control. Like, you're not like a sprawling international 10,000 person org at this point. Anyway, I know, I'm sure it's something that they're concerned about. It is confusing to me how this keeps happening, and specifically with Yuga. Like, I don't think maybe I'm misremembering, but like I don't feel like we've gotten big doodles leaks, or like these other projects don't seem to be plagued with this. I guess Noah Davies, there were some punks. Well, that was also Yuga Labs though, right? When before Noah Davies took over as the
Yeah.
punks brand lead or whatever, there was punks pumped, and so clearly people knew. Um
You're
yeah,
right though. Yeah, I mean, I think the intensity is higher for them just because of the value of the Bored Ape ecosystem.
yeah.
Maybe that's part of it, but arguably so are doodles are very valuable, and Azukis and so many others. So yeah, I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd say they are basically growing really fast. They raised a lot of money very quickly. They're relying on contractors because they can't hire people fast enough,
Mm, mm,
and that's what leads to it.
yeah,
It's not. I'm
interesting.
not saying it's acceptable. I mean, they should definitely not let this happen, given all the scrutiny on them right now. But it does continue, unfortunately, to pop
Yeah.
up.
And this is, I think, probably part of these growing pains that when you're moving from like the totally wild west to a $4 billion like corporate entity, that's not a perfectly linear, smooth transition, right? Where people have buddies in the space and
Yeah.
they're used to just like on Discord telling their buddies about this and that, or telling their friend, because it still probably in many ways feels like a little bit, like the Wild West, and we're all friends and we live in this weird little insular nuclear, which still doesn't feel like nuclear. It still doesn't feel like the right word. Why am I losing my mind? Like nuclear
Because
family. Is
in
it
movies and
nuclear
TV, people
family?
keep saying nuclear,
Yeah,
nuclear. Yeah.
but is nuclear even the right word for like my nuclear family?
Um, in like the 70s, yes. I don't know if people use that
I was
expression.
raised by people who lived in the 70s, so it became a
Okay.
part of my
Yeah.
vernacular. I guess like I like picked up on it. Anyway, let's. Speaking of professionalizing, new Cool Cat CEO was announced. Steven Teglas, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He from Warner Brothers. He was an advisor to Recur, which I think is having some difficulties. So that's not necessarily like a huge bragging right, but I don't know, and whatever. So is the new CEO of Cool Cats. News the floor pumped like 10% on this news. What do you think?
I think that 10% is not going to last very long. I think it ultimately comes down to results. And I think especially in the Web3 space, like you saying you worked for Google or Warner Brothers or whatever is not as valuable. Like this is a very different space. It does not operate the same way an old stodgy production company or music company or entertainment
Mm,
company works. So, I think he'll do a great job, but the proof will be in the pudding. And ultimately, as somebody who invests in NFTs longer term, I don't care about the short term, right? I want to see what this person's going to do over the next few years. My hope, though, is that the access to all the connections in the Warner Brothers family, all the celebrities, musicians, etc., is going to turn into cool opportunities for cool cats. And if you consider them to be something like a Hello Kitty, like Hello Kitty started off as just like simple IP. Now it's on every type of merchandise in the store, right? So you could see
Mm-hmm.
cool cats going that way. And you do need somebody who has the vision and like the depth of knowledge in so many industries to make sure that IP can be stretched out further. So
Yeah.
I give them the benefit of the doubt, but right now, I mean, I don't think the pump is justified because no work has been done.
Yeah. I think it's a positive signal that he is fundamentally an IP man. Like if you look at who these different companies hire Doodles, obviously with their hire of Julian, like Julian came from Billboard, he came from the music world. You get a pretty clear indication that Doodles is leaning heavily into music. And then of course they announce their Pharrell partnership. Like that's a good signal of where they really want to double down and be relevant and prominent. And it feels like the trouble with Cool Cats has been they got away from the core IP and like the core family friendly art and that as their value prop. And they moved too quickly into gaming and Cooltopia and sort of these other things that were distractions from just these adorable, iconic, potentially iconic characters. And so bringing somebody in who has experience with like long-term franchise management, which he apparently does and has really worked with IP. My guess is it's pumping partly on the feeling that this is a return to what Cool Cats has historically done best, and that he can kind of usher them into this next phase, which is really looks like a return to what made them great in the beginning. My guess is that's like the where the optimism is coming from, and
Do
I
you think?
I share it. I would say with a lowercase s
Yeah,
or lowercase o for optimism.
hot take question. Do you think they seeded sort of like that family friendly vibe to Doodles?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think there is a lot of room in this space. So I think Doodles benefited, frankly, from some of the kind of downfall of Cool Cats, but they certainly didn't cause it, right? It was like an unforced error. Like I think Cool
Yeah.
Cats kind of made their own grave, and I don't mean that in like a permanent sense. I've always been, if Pudgy Penguins can make a comeback, by God, so can Cool Cats. So like, I don't think I use the term grave loosely, but like Cool Cats made their own kind of grave, and then Doodles was there, I imagine, to kind of pick up some of those pieces and definitely have that. But I think family friendly is a really powerful way to go, and that was something else that really clicked for me in talking to Will Weinrob and the Cryptoids team and thinking about what they're doing, which is like that's a powerful route when you think about the biggest IP that has come out. I mean, I'm looking at Stephen Teglis's history, and it's Mickey and Minnie Mouse, Frozen, Cars, Toy Story, Hello Kitty, Nickelodeon, Harry Potter. Like, what do these things have in common? They're children's stories that adults also like they're targeting families. So I think this amount of space out there for family friendly content is just about limitless. So I do think they ceded
Yeah.
some space to Doodles, but
Yeah, and I agree. I think that ultimately we're in a place right now where kids cannot directly engage with crypto, or probably shouldn't be, right, legally
right.
speaking. And so it's the parents of those kids, or it's people who just want to invest in a company that's going to make products that are not crypto based for kids. And that's right now a tenuous business to be in. I think that down the road we can get to that place. But if you're family friendly with the intention of actually reaching kids, I think we're way too early to be banking on that type of business.
So Will Weinrob, who I've now mentioned for the third time in this conversation,
Drink
you
every
can tell,
time you say Will Weinrob.
yeah, exactly. Take a shot. You can tell the interview had an impact on me. They're working with Flow to develop like safety parameters around wallets for kids, like the way that you would have like safety controls as a parent on Disney Plus or whatever insert here on TV or on the internet. So developing ways for kids to interact with these like digital toys, but in a way that's very monitored by a parent and that isn't just like free unfettered access to like MetaMask or something that obviously should be beyond their age. So and that just struck me when he said that. It's like one of the things that comes out of having a really clear sense of your target audience and a really clear sense of your goal, where and that's I think where Cool Cats got a little lost was they kind of didn't have a clear sense of who they were targeting or why or for what. And so you don't end up having these
Yeah,
you
I
don't end
mean,
up building these products that are like really, once you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I definitely think focus is very important in the early days. And if they do want to go after enabling kids to sort of engage with the brand in some way, they will have to think about parental controls and all these things that will make parents feel assured, right, that it's safe. And based on my time in the video games industry, I can tell you there's a lot of sensitivity to how kids can engage with digital objects and like how much money they can spend in games. You see that with Minecraft and Fortnite, like parents just like losing their minds over their kids spending thousands of dollars and so much time in these spaces. So now imagine like blockchain enabled versions of these things and the outcry that might come. So yeah, you have to approach this very carefully and methodically. And I think that anybody who is doing that with like protecting kids front and center is really important, or is really smart. Like you have to take that approach.
I interviewed Klon, who's the Cool Cat artist, months ago, and he noted that some of their original community was really built because it was parents being like, this was the first project I was able to kind of introduce to my kids too, where I would show them the cat, or the kid would pick out the cat that they should buy, and it was just very friendly for kids to kind of look at. And there's a quote from Klon here in this announcement about Stephen Teglis taking over as CEO. Klon says, Stephen believes in the vision for Blue Cat and the impact this character can make on the world. With him at the helm, Cool Cats is on its way to becoming a household name. So again, just I think reiterating like a return to fundamentally that character, that art as like the path forward. MetaMask is the leading Web3 wallet to get you access to everything you need in Web3. If you're just getting started on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. And if you need to fund your MetaMask account in order to buy that NFT that you've been eyeing, well, now you can do that directly through MetaMask. Just click the blue buy button on the home screen. Personally, I'm mad that I've spent extra gas fees transferring money from Coinbase to MetaMask in order to buy NFTs. I've been using MetaMask directly, and it is so much better. You can also buy stable coins and native tokens from Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, CeeLo, and others, and you can do it directly with your debit card, your credit card, through Apple Pay or Google Pay. And there is now an improved buying experience on MetaMask Mobile. You'll only see tokens that are in your region, so it's personalized to you, and you'll get real-time quotes, so you know you're always getting the best deal. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask yet, what are you waiting for? Go try it out. You can learn more about buying cryptocurrencies with MetaMask at metamask.io/buy-crypto.
Immutable X is the layer 2 platform for crypto gaming. Immutable offers massive scalability with up to 9,000 transactions per second and instant transaction confirmation. No more gas fees, no more waiting around for your transaction to clear. Immutable's zero knowledge rollup finally unlocks the world of crypto gaming. Immutable X is the only gas-free NFT minting platform with over 26 million NFTs minted, all with zero gas fees. With the power of Immutable, gaming developers don't also need to become smart contract developers. They just need to plug in to Immutable's API and instantly start unlocking the full potential of crypto assets inside of games. This is why world-class companies and projects have decided to deploy on Immutable X, like GameStop, Ember Sword, Planet Quest, Illuvium, TikTok, and many more behind the scenes. So start building your game on Immutable X today at immutable.com.
Okay, speaking of brands and professionalizing, the theme of the day, Scotch and Soda NFTs. Are you familiar with Scotch and Soda as a brand, Bored?
Honestly, no.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me entirely. Again, like this is a brand, I wasn't even actually overly familiar with it, but there's a Scotch and Soda store sort of at the end of my block, and it's got fabulous, very cool clothing. So I
Okay,
became
yeah,
acquainted
yeah.
with it
I have
by
driven
living
by it, and I
near
was like,
it.
is that a clothing store? Is that what that is? Okay, cool
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, they're a cool brand, I have to say. I have some pants from Scotch and Soda. They're great. So they're a brand with some swagger, and so it's exciting to me to see them entering NFTs. And again, entering it in a way where this is fundamentally a loyalty program for them. So they had launched something called Club Soda. Is that what it was? Club Soda. Yeah, they launched Club Soda, which was like a their like loyalty program only a few months ago. I think it hasn't been around for that long, and then they kind of quickly updated it to include this NFT component. They're calling it Club Soda 3.0. It will include exclusive access to merch and events they throw, partnerships and collaborations. There's an element of being able to co-create with their partners. So again, really treating this like a full-on corporate loyalty plus program that's underpinned by NFTs and feels like they're coming out with utility first. It's not just like, hey, we're doing an NFT drop and like whatever. Like they're really just making it a part of a loyalty program that they were already planning on. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very much like what the Starbucks,
Totally.
NFT loyalty program is, and I think it's yet to be seen. Like, does this need to be an NFT? Because I think that the question is, if I have this loyalty, membership, can I sell it to somebody else? And if I can't, then what is the sort of the blockchain enablement doing other than just making sure that like everyone can publicly see how many membership points I have to either Starbucks or to Scotch and Soda?
Hmm.
So I think it's really good for onboarding people and just raising awareness of NFTs. I do want to sort of hold my breath and see kind of what the utility is. And personally, I would love to be able to sell like loyalty points. Like think about racking up Hilton points or Marriott points and never wanting to use them and being able to sell them to other people. I would definitely be down for that.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think it speaks to part of the utility. I use that loosely with NFTs is the future promise that everyone will use them and therefore it can be used as a way to socially signal because we'll know where to go to look,
Yeah,
right? And so we need brands like these. We need brands coming in early to bootstrap that mainstream adoption, and then the utility will be obvious for future brands because they want to show off that Taylor Swift or Gigi Hadid or whatever, right? Like shops at Scotch and Soda, or like, that's probably a poor example, but you get the point, right? That if this for the socially signaling thing to be fulfilled, which then becomes really beneficial for the brands themselves, we need people actually using NFTs on a regular basis and showing them off in wallets. So to me, part of this is like some of the utility comes later. I also think if they just they become mainstream enough, it is a more efficient way to manage a community than like an email list, and then like, you know what I mean, and then you got an
totally.
email like thing that's hard to verify, you scan when you go into the party. Like NFTs are a better way to manage it once people have the tech and the infrastructure, because it's just, to hold NFTs and everybody does it and it's like a normalized thing. So some of the gains here come just when mainstream adopts. It's a chicken and an egg problem.
Well, right now the floor price is 0.02 for a Scotch and Soda NFT. So good entry point if you are a fan of their brand.
I might hop in only because I do live near a club soda or like a Scotch and Soda store, and I have shopped there before, and I don't know, kind of interesting. The other thing that is we have to mention here is they launched on Polygon, but they launched through Salesforce's NFT platform, which again is something that I think is exciting to see Salesforce getting into this, recognizing its value. I mean, they have a lot of materials on their website, clearly trying to explain NFTs to folks, explain it from a why your business should care about this perspective. So the Salesforce is building out like an NFT, a launch pad. So you can, launch NFTs on there, sell NFTs on there, manage your NFT program through this Salesforce platform. I think it's a very smart move by Salesforce. It's still in some sort of beta. So this is like one of their initial like pilot partners is Scotch and Soda. I will say, going through the Salesforce literature, and I tweeted this morning as well, they are still referring to Ethereum as a proof of work blockchain. So if anybody has connections to Marc Benioff, get that man on the phone, get somebody from Salesforce on the phone, tell them to update their website. Ethereum is no longer a proof of work chain. And the worst part is they like call it a proof of work chain in the context of talking about like how bad proof of work chains are for the environment. So they're like trying to draw this really clear distinction of like, we're using things like Polygon or Immutable X. Like we don't use those terrible proof of work blockchains like Ethereum. And it's like, well, you add a touch.
Yeah, I will
Update
say
it.
if your business model is being a concierge for big brands who don't know how to navigate crypto, you should definitely have the most up-to-date information. Salesforce obviously has lots of analysts and people who can make sure this happens. So hopefully they prioritize that point. But yeah, clearly, they're trying to be sort of a nicer front end for brands who don't want to like deal with OpenSea and minting and contracts themselves. And they will definitely help onboard more brands to do this. And I think what's cool about it is ultimately if all these loyalty programs get created, there's going to be a lot of competition for how to reward customers and win over attention. So I think ultimately it's going to be really good for you and
Consumers
me.
win.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And Salesforce just has such a trusted name is it makes the water warm for brands that want to get in.
You don't get fired for hiring Salesforce at your job.
Exactly. Well put. Okay, couple other things. We'll maybe speed run through a couple of these. The Haas Brothers Multibeasts project launched and sold out, so I think it's only on secondary now. Did you track this project at all by any chance? I'll say a couple things on it.
Look, this looks like one of those projects that someone should have told me about before, and I totally missed it and made no money.
Yeah, no worries. I don't even know where the floor price is now. I'll give some context. I think the project is cool. It's not. I don't know what it'll do on secondary, but so the premise is, well, I'll say the Haas brothers are pretty renowned artists, and they do interesting installations, and they're like true artists through and through. And their premise for this was, how do we represent digital identities, like what's on the inside, not just what's on the outside. And so they designed this personality test that is wild. And I guess I can talk about the personality test now that other people have taken it and it's kind of public. It's like also kind of sexual, this personality test. Like it'll show you a bunch of images with like varying degrees of like pubic hair, and then you have to like select, you just like pick one, So I will say I took this test with the Haas Brothers team and some like agents from UTA. I was like a trial run of these tests, and it was a very strange test.
Little risque. You wouldn't do it with your
in a room
parents.
full of people. Yeah. And they, so I've laughed about that publicly, and now I can talk a little bit more about it. It was a funny thing, but they were all super, polite and lovely about it. So anyhow, so you take this personality test, which they claim has some sort of bearing, some sort of backing of like, this will tell you something about yourself. And then those inputs determine the look of the monster that comes out. And, we're all narcissists. This plays right into, our innate egotism. And like, it's just fun. It's fun to be like, what do I look like in a Haas Brothers conception of like my personality? And then they have really approached this project with like partnerships in mind from a smart contract perspective, that their back end is Remaster. I've had the Remaster folks on the podcast before as part of a panel with like IP lawyers, because Remaster is really focused on how do we encode licensing rights, digital rights at the smart contract level, into these NFTs, because there's a lot of ambiguity around it right now with a lot of these projects. So the Haas Brothers are approaching this really with the goal of like getting some sort of corporate partner, and that wants to license a number of these monsters. And then if your monster gets chosen, you can license it, and that'll all get encoded and kind of properly tracked at the smart contract level, so that if you do resell it, for example, like that history follows with it, and those licensing deals are very accessible and seen, and whatever. So I just think it's a thoughtful project by a well-respected artist duo. So
yeah, and I think the fact that they have a brand, it's more impactful, right? Like if a new project comes out and says, CCO, and everybody can do whatever they want with their IP, but they haven't really built up that IP over many years, it's not as impactful. But these guys clearly have some equity that they're willing to share with the community. So I do appreciate that approach, and I do think it's going to become kind of the norm moving forward.
Yep, totally. I did a Twitter space that you can probably go find if folks are curious, with the Haas brothers talking about the project. So if folks want even more details, go scroll through my Twitter. Okay, other news. Tokenproof announced that they are supporting now the Flow blockchain for their token gating services. No major commentary here on my part. I don't know if you have anything. I just think it's cool and exciting. I think Flow has really been turning up the pressure lately, turning up the heat. They announced their partnership with Ticketmaster. I'm bullish on Cryptoys, which is on Flow and loves building on Flow. I've had friends texting me about their NFL All Day program, which I have friends who are like not even deep into NFTs who are loving NFL All Day. So just continue to be good news, I feel like, out of the Flow ecosystem, and they just continue to build. It's impressive.
They've been around a while. They have really strong relationships. They're not the darling of the NFT ecosystem, which is still ETH, but I do think that their relationships on the corporate side is really powerful. And again, I'm going to just now plug this idea for Ticketmaster to do loot box seating at concerts. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Flow, if you're listening, pitch this to your partner. Yeah, totally. I mean, we talk about friendly entrance for businesses, and we talk, Salesforce being a friendly entrance for businesses. I think Flow is too. Like they look at, okay, they've got partners in the NBA. Top Shot did incredibly well. They're partnered with the NFL. They're partnered with Ticketmaster. They're like family safe. They have that feeling. And of course, they've optimized their chain specifically for onboarding new users. So I've expressed plenty of hesitation on this show about, kind of locking up your project on a chain that doesn't have the network effects of like an Ethereum, and the concerns around bridging assets from chain to chain, and concerns around will we get to a safe multi-chain future. But credit where credit is due, that within the ecosystem that they're building, and they've done a lot of impressive things. And I love Tokenproof, I love Flow, so I'm glad to see them coming together.
Yeah, and I have to assume that the multi-chain future is inevitable. So the same way you can exchange dollars for other types of currencies, that's got to be the way that crypto goes. Otherwise, there really is no future. Like everything that is promised by crypto implies that yes, you should be able to change your stuff fast, cheap, and easily. And so it's not quite there yet, but it 100% I feel like is going to be.
The counter is like if Ethereum gets to the point where it's hyper scaled faster than bridging between chains feels safe, why not just build 90% of everything on Ethereum with maybe a couple outlier cases, meaning it could be on like layer twos or, whatever, right?
Yep.
And then the network effects have accrued there, and that's where we land. I agree. I think I'm probably not there. I literally vacillate on this question. But I
think
we
the move
probably end up
is
in a
like you just
multi-chain world, but
yeah, if one chain is truly going out and one is going to be the king, then I think projects and companies are going to just migrate their items over to the other chain, and your investment will likely be protected.
Next, as we go through our lightning round, the NASDAQ is preparing to launch an institutional crypto service. Specifically, they want to custody your crypto. This is interesting. I mean, I think the reality is anybody who's in the TradFi world, and I would think this is especially true for like your banks and your JP Morgans or your Bank of Americas or whatever, like don't want to lose customers who are increasingly putting money into things that they can't custody, which is crypto. So not surprising to me at all that anybody in the TradFi world is trying to increasingly like get a piece of this and actually hold and custody your crypto. I'm sure regulators also prefer it and are pushing hard for it because they feel like they probably have more control or visibility into a Goldman Sachs than into Ledger. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great sign for crypto, very bullish. But it really is a product that is catering to large institutional money, right? So like, if you need to invest $1 billion, you're not setting up a Coinbase account, right? And like,
Great
yeah,
point.
you could work with an FTX, but then people might have questions. I haven't heard about them until a few years ago. They're based in the Bahamas, but NASDAQ, I know them. I've been entrusting them with my money for a very, very long time, and they're going to basically handle crypto for me and I don't have to think about it. Cool. Let's go with that. So it's a very smart business decision. It's another just asset for people to trade. There's the demand is there, and NASDAQ doesn't want to become irrelevant as, older types of assets get less popular.
Corporate crypto. That's what we're dubbing it, and we like it. I mean that in a good way. Corporate gets a bad rap, which I feel like, or maybe it's just me, I think of corporate as bad because I hate being confined in structures and having bosses and all these things that I associate.
You're a corporation, right? So it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an LLC, right? Legally, if we're getting really specific and legal, but yes, I'm a corporation. I sort of. I tell myself what to do, and so I hate anything where I feel like I lose freedom. But it's great for the space. Corporate crypto. Okay. OK Bears signed with IMG. IMG has been appointed as the exclusive global licensing representative to launch consumer products and experiences for the Solana-based PFP project. I really just wanted an excuse to circle back with what's happening with OK Bears. Is this a project you tracked at all or have followed?
Have also been on the sidelines. Honestly, the thing is, I got really early into Yuga. And so once that happened and I picked up some apes, I was like, I'm never going to win again. Like that's the win. So why am I even going to try to trade? Yeah.
That's brilliant. You realize like you probably have the best, like that's like,
you don't win the lottery twice. You know what I mean?
NFT collecting. Yeah. No. And look, I'm not like a super active trader either for similar reasons. Like I really want to study the space and like see where it's all sussing out. And so much of what was happening in the bull market just was clearly unsustainable and funny enough. So OK Bears was a project I talked about on the show back in May, I guess. It was like a month or so after it had launched and it was doing really well. And I think I said at the time, like, so somebody called OK Bears the next Yuga Labs, or not somebody, I think it was like commonly people were being like, this is the next Yuga Labs. And I was like, this is a top signal. Like this is a sell signal. And I went back and looked, play that clip, Dave. I think we have that clip of me saying it's a sell signal. And then it is getting called the next Bored Ape Yacht Club. This to me is a sell sign. I have said it before. I think it is a red freaking flag when people start saying this is the next, Bored Ape Yacht Club, especially very early in a project's founding. It usually means that it's super, super hyped and it's due for a bit of a downturn. That's my personal opinion. We'll see what happens. We can look at the chart. It's literally like it peaked on May 17th. I said that on May 19th. Literally the peak in the chart is May 19th or May 17th it peaked. And it's just been like downhill from there. So it it really was a sell signal when you're getting that much hype being compared to Yuga. With that being said, I've always thought they had like a sweet branding to them, which is half the battle in the beginning of being an NFT project is having sort of an authentic vibe. I talked about that with DGods, with Utes. I think like they have this like, for whatever else their problems maybe, they have this like authentic bro vibe that resonates for people. And OK Bears has this kind of authentic, like almost positive mental health vibe. I think the characters are cute. So like I've always felt soft towards them from that perspective. Their team is anonymous, which I hate. I know you're an anon, so and I
I
trust
have
you, but
lots
like,
of feelings, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, we could talk about it, but it's like a cute little project. So I don't know where to land on this. I mean, like I'm sort of rooting for them because they're a Solana based project. They predated the Utes DGods thing with having like this kind of good branding on Solana. I don't expect anything crazy here. They signed with IMG as a global licensing representative, which is really interesting. That suggests they're not shooting for like movies, right? They didn't get like a UTA agent to go pitch them on like TV shows. They're clearly going for like merch, and they've got a global licensing representative for consumer products. So
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
what they're going for.
That is very smart, honestly, because in all of my sort of understanding of how the talent agent business works is they're taking a pretty big chunk of your revenue once you've signed with them. And if you have influence, if you have reach, you kind of have to ask like why are you giving up your profits? But in this particular deal with licensing, it's basically like if you can get me licensing deals, then yeah, you can take a big percentage of that profit. That's fine. So I think that they approach this in a really smart way. And they have a brand that is going to look really good on t-shirts and other stuff. So I think it's bullish for them, and it will be cool to see what products come of this that are just not at all related to crypto and are just leveraging the IP.
Yep. Apparently they recently OK Bears recently collaborated with NBA basketball supplier Wilson and Chicago Bulls point guard Lonzo Ball on a one-of-one signed NFT in his likeness. So they're looking for these kinds of deals. I mean, again, we'll have to see what comes out of it. The cynical take on this is like IMG is going to go to like the licensing trade show that I think happens in like February, and they're going to have 50 brands like splayed out on a table, and the people looking for projects to license are going to come by and they're going to say, which of these 50 do you want? And maybe OK Bears gets picked. The optimistic view is this is a cool, slightly maybe different way to go than a lot of these other projects who seem pretty like they want their TV show, and we'll get the face of these products out there, and good for them for continuing to build and push forward.
Well, maybe we'll see a Build-A-Bear that is an OK Bear soon.
That's true. Yeah. Gosh, are Build-A-Bears still a thing? You have kids, don't you?
No, I don't. But
Oh wow, OMG Surprise Dolls and Build-A-Bear.
I might have worked in some industries where this was a thing, so I won't go too deep into it.
Fair. Cool. Let's close on last two pieces of news. We'll end with that Tyler Hobbs' latest project, QQL.art, because I have more to say on that. KKR shares of KKR are being sold on AVAX. So KKR, one of the biggest private equity funds in the world, has made its new healthcare strategic growth fund available on the Avalanche blockchain. So they're basically trying to securitize. Okay, let's read this. Individuals will be able to invest in KKR's healthcare fund through a tokenized feeder fund on the Avalanche blockchain provided by Securitize. My big takeaway here is Avalanche is doing a lot of interesting financialization of products things. They did the initial litigation offering product where they're crowdfunding like lawsuits and then looking to share the profits that may result from these lawsuits, and kind of arguing that there's like you can get these big kind of risk adjusted opportunities of like, if this class action lawsuit succeeds, it's $400 million in payout, and you can get a fraction of that for having put in, I don't know, $100 or whatever in buying one of these like initial litigation offering tokens. So kind of dark, kind of brilliant. And so they did ILOs, and now they're doing it with KKR and this specific healthcare fund they're doing. I think it's very interesting.
Huh. How does the SEC feel about something like this?
The ILO, I don't know how they're doing it for this. The ILO is a security. So they ran their first ILO product offering through Republic, which is a broker that is registered to do Reg CF crowdfunding deals. So like regulation crowdfund is a law where if you're raising less, like under $5 million, you can basically do it from like non-accredited investors, but there's all of these like hoops that they end up having to jump through with Republic and whatever. But so they actually issued a security for this, which is, I imagine, why the SEC would be okay with it.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate that. And I think then the other big question is, are they KYCing people who are buying into this? And how secure is that?
Yep. I have to look into this healthcare, this KKR deal a little bit more. Again, I know more about the initial litigation offering deal. In that case, people had to be KYC'd, to go through Republic. I'm assuming it's the same here, because there's almost no way. There's no. I mean, they're literally calling it they're using a company called Securitize.
So
they're not getting around the security component of this. So it's either all for accredited investors, or they're doing something like the Reg CF raise. And in either case, folks are getting KYC'd. Yeah, I like that. Again, I think it's I think we have to get away from feeling like everything has to be allowed to be done like totally Wild West anonymously.
Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, I will say on the record, like I pay all of my taxes, do everything legitimately. I don't think that anonymous identities should be using that to avoid, doing things ethically and legally. So 100% agree with you there.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's close on QQL.art. This is the latest Tyler Hobbs project. I think you tweeted out some sass about this. Sass specifically suggesting you don't love the art. Let me give a breakdown of just sort of what this is for anybody who maybe hasn't been following it, and then I'd love to get your hot take. So QQL.art is this, you can go to it. That's like the website. And it's, in their own words, a collaborative experiment in generative art by Tyler Hobbs and Dandelion Wist. So you go onto the website, you can go to create, and then you can select all of these different variables. And I'm assuming it's an algorithm that was created by Tyler himself, and you click generate art and it creates a piece of work based on Tyler's algorithm and sort of the inputs that you put in. And then you can save these works of art to kind of your whatever collection on the page and end up with hundreds of pieces of art. And then what Tyler's going to do, and let me check the date on this. Basically, there's going to be a mint pass. The mint opens September 30th. He's doing a Dutch auction to buy mint passes. You get the mint pass, then you can pick one of your generative pieces that you've created to actually mint. The mint pass is good for forever. There's like no expiration on it. So I think there's going to be some interesting kind of game mechanics here of like people waiting and not minting immediately to kind of see what kind of traits start to be the most valuable. And I think Tyler's actually going to pick three pieces that are his favorite to mint, and so that'll probably influence what becomes then the popular art to try and mint. So a fun experiment, as they say. All right, hit me with your take.
Well, okay, so I love experimenting on the web. My perspective on generative art is that it's a really cool tool for creating components of other art. So for example, you want to build a video game and you can't draw all the items that you need for that game. Cool, you can use generative art and the pieces of that can be turned into what is actually the art, which is that comprehensive story that you are telling. To call a single item art that was generated by a computer, I think is not really accurate and is kind of lazy, because part of the process for art is the actual process, right? Not just clicking a button or typing in words and guessing and checking. So my snarky tweet was like, I posted a picture of a spirograph for anybody who remembers that, which is just a bunch of lines in circles. So I think it's cool. I think that like if the standalone output is a single piece of art, I'm not as impressed by it. I certainly would not invest in the space from an NFT perspective.
So my pushback is, one of the things that was so impressive about Fidenzas, which are popping off right now, probably because QQL is coming out, and so people are focusing on Tyler. Or there was like a sweep, somebody bought like, a bunch of Fidenzas. What was so impressive about Fidenzas was the consistent quality and variety of that project. Now, the way art blocks works, folks probably know this, right? But like Tyler wrote that code, and then I would go onto the art blocks website and mint a Fidenza, and he had no say after he locked that code in. He got no say in what the output was. So it wasn't a case of like, I'm going to generate thousands upon thousands of prints and then pick my favorite 100 and put those up for sale or something, right? Like the code was what the code was once he stepped away from it. And so to be able to write a code that can produce like almost entirely beautiful options that also have a tremendous amount of variety is, from my understanding, like very challenging and impressive. And Tyler's art history has been usually a blending of like generative stuff from an algorithm and some like physical art as well. So I think that is like, that should be considered real art. Like crafting the algorithm and trialing it in and of itself, I see as a very legitimate form of art. At some point there is a line, and we're going to brush up against what is that line. I mean, with things like Dolly, right? Like if I'm just like typing in words and an algorithm is like reading my words and outputting something, like, do I get to be an artist? Like that there's a fine line there. And this obviously, this QQL project pushes closer to that line than I think just Tyler's like original art blocks work. Cause this is a case where like I, as a user, I'm just like plugging in some variables I like, seeing what spits out, and then out of like hundreds and hundreds of options, picking my favorite.
Yeah.
But I do think there's value to generative art.
I will compromise with you on this point, which is what he created is art. That code is absolutely art. And if there was a contract that said that anything that gets produced with that code can never be sold or traded, then I would say, cool, this is a really interesting product. So what he created was art. Now, the output that people are creating and then selling and trading is where I draw the line and say, no, that's not art. That's a really cool thing that exists, but you didn't actually create art. You took someone else's art and you used it to make something with it. And so that's a very kind of vague and loose interpretation from my perspective on it. But when it starts to get traded, that is where I feel like you kind of lose the magic that was created with that code.
Why? What does the trading introduce into the system?
Because the process, right? The process, he put time and effort into creating that code. That process was the art. The people who are using the thing that he made, who are using the art that he created, are not putting that time in. So my personal definition then is that is not art. That is just a product. And it being traded as if it is art is not really legit for me.
Are Fidenzas art?
I don't think they are. Personally.
So you don't think, okay, you think the code is art, but not the Fidenzas.
Exactly. Like kudos to the people who wrote the code. That is 100% art. If a traditional artist, if like Jackson Pollock created like, a piece of art and then said, hey, you guys can go and remix this and do whatever you want with it. Ultimately, like he did that work. He still did the initial work.
The Fidenzas, nobody's remixing, right? Like he wrote the code, somebody's just hitting the generate button. I guess you're saying like that's the remixing part. Like it's not, you're not putting in the variables in the same way. I very much think Fidenzas are art, and therefore I think that this is also art.
I support you. That's okay. It's just an opinion.
Totally. Of course. This is a code that Tyler wrote. But yeah, we're going to bump up against these lines and these questions because we're moving into a world increasingly where computers can be tools to create a lot of things that had no really human intervention at the outset, or strategery at the outset. And it'll be interesting to see where it comes out. All right, Bored. Thank you so much for joining me. This was our show. Any final words? Any topics you feel like we need to hit upon before we part ways here?
Carly, thank you so much. It was great to spend time with you and chat about all these things. It was so comprehensive. I feel like we've covered basically everything that happened in the last week.
And yet I'm sure I missed like 100 things because this space is absolutely bananas, even during a bear market. But thank you so much. And I hope folks have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.